Conrad was 10 years old, and the doctor had pronounced in his professional opinion that the boy would not live another 5 years. The silky and toffee-nosed doctor contributed little, but his opinion was endorsed by Mrs. DeJoy, who counted for nearly everything. Mrs. DeJoy was Conrad's cousin and guardian, and in his eyes, she represented those of the world that are necessarily disagreeable, in opposition to his own world of curiosity and rebellion, consisting entirely of himself and his vivid imagination. One of these days, Conrad supposed, he would succumb to the building pressures of necessary and boring things. Without his imagination, which was rampant in his loneliness, he would have succumbed long ago. Mrs. DeJoy would never have confessed to herself in her most honest moments that she disliked Conrad, though she may have been dimly aware that thwarting him for his own good was a duty she did not mind. Conrad hated her with the desperate sincerity which he was perfectly able to mask. And from the realm of his imagination, she was locked out, an unclean thing which should find no entrance. He found little attraction in the dull, cheerless garden overlooked by so many windows that were ready to open with a message not to do this or that, or a reminder that it was time for his medicine. The fruit trees that it contained were set like rare specimens, and it would probably have been difficult to find a gardener who would offer 10 shillings for their entire yearly produce. In a forgotten corner, however, hidden quite well behind a dismal shrubbery, was a disused tool shed of respectable proportions, and within its 4 walls, Conrad found a haven that acted as a playroom and a cathedral. He filled his safe space with familiar phantoms, imaginary friends evoked from fragments of history and from his own brain, along with 2 occupants of flesh and blood. The first was a ragged little hen living in the corner, which the boy lavished with affection. Further back, in the shadows, stood a large hutch divided into 2 compartments, one of which was fronted with iron bars. This was the abode of a large ferret, which a friendly butcher boy had once smuggled, cage and all, into its present quarters in a secret shed in exchange for a hoard of small silver. In truth, Conrad was dreadfully afraid of the little sharp-fanged beast, but the ferret was his most treasured possession. Its very presence in the tool shed was a secret thrill of fearful joy, to be kept most carefully from the knowledge of the woman, as he privately dubbed his cousin. And one day, out of heaven knows what material, he spun the beast a wonderful name: Vashtar. And from that moment, the ferret grew into a god and a religion. The woman went once a week to a church nearby and took Conrad with her, but to him, the church service was nothing more than an alien ritual in a false temple. Every Thursday, in the dim and musty silence of the secret shed, he worshipped before the wooden hutch, before Vashtar, the great ferret. Red flowers in their season and scarlet berries in the wintertime were offered at his shrine, for Vashtar was a god of urgency and passion, as opposed to the woman's religion, which went to great lengths in the contrary. And on great festivals, which were of irregular occurrence, powdered nutmeg was sprinkled in front of his hutch, an important feature of the offering being that the nutmeg had been stolen. On one occasion, when Mrs. Joy suffered from a toothache, Conrad kept up the festival during the entire 3 days and nearly succeeded in persuading himself that Vashtar was personally responsible for the toothache. If the malady had lasted for another day, the nutmeg would have run fresh out. After a while, Conrad's absorption in the tool shed began to attract the notice of his guardian.
It's not good for him to be pottering down there so often,
she promptly decided. And at breakfast one morning, she announced that she had taken the old hen overnight and sold her away. With her short-sighted eyes, she peered at Conrad, waiting for an outbreak of rage or sorrow, which she was ready to rebuke with a flurry of excellent warrants and reasoning. But Conrad said nothing. There was nothing to be said. Something perhaps in his white, set face gave her a momentary qualm, for at tea that afternoon there was toast on the table, a delicacy which she usually banned on the grounds that it was unhealthy, and also because she found the making of it troublesome. The incessant crumbles a deadly offense to her middle-class feminine eye. The woman observed that he did not touch his plate, and exclaimed with an injured air,
"I thought toast was your favorite."
"Sometimes," said Conrad. In the shed that evening, there was an innovation in the worship of the hutch god.
"Do one thing for me, Vashtar,"
Conrad said. The thing was not specified. As Vashtar was a god, he was supposed to know. And choking back a sob as he looked at that other empty corner, Conrad went back to the world he so hated. And every night, in the welcome darkness of his bedroom, and every evening in the dusk of the tool shed, Conrad repeated his bitter petition.
"Do one thing for me, Vashtar."
The woman noticed that the visits to the shed did not cease, and one cold afternoon she made a further journey of inspection.
"What do you keep locked in that hutch?" she asked.
Conrad shut his lips tight, but she ransacked his bedroom till she found a carefully hidden key and marched down to the shed to complete her discovery, bidding him stay in the house. Conrad stationed himself by the furthest window of the dining room, where the door of the shed could just be seen beyond the shrubbery. He saw the woman enter, and imagined her opening the sacred hutch and peering down into the thick straw bed where his god lay hidden, and Conrad fervently breathed his prayer for one last time.
"Do one thing for me, Vashtar,"
Conrad said. But as much as he believed, and as often as he prayed, his wonderful god would soon be a god no longer, but a simple brown ferret in a hutch. And the woman would come out from the shed with that smile he loathed so well on her face, and in an hour or two the gardener would carry Vashtar away. And the woman would triumph, as she always triumphed now, and he would grow ever more sickly under her pestering and domineering and superior ways, till one day the doctor's prediction of a short life would be proved right. And in the sting and misery of defeat, Conrad began to chant loudly.
"Vashtar the ferret went on his way. Vashtar the beautiful, Vashtar the brave. His teeth were white, his thoughts were red. Those calling for peace, he leaves them dead.
And then he stopped his chanting, and he drew closer to the window pane. The door of the shed still stood ajar, and the minutes were slipping by. He watched the birds flying in their little parties across the lawn. He counted them over and over again, with one eye always on that swinging door. They were long minutes, but they slipped by nevertheless. A sour-faced maid came in to lay the table for tea, and still Conrad stood and waited and watched. Hope had crept by inches into his heart, and presently his eyes were rewarded. Eyes that had only known the wistful patience of defeat. Out from the shed doorway came a low, long beast, with eyes ablink at the waning daylight, and dark, wet stains in the yellow and brown near its jaws and throat. The great ferret made its way down to the brook at the foot of the garden, drank for a moment, then crossed a little plank bridge and vanished in the bushes. Such was the passing of the god Vashtar. Conrad dropped to his knees.
"Tea is ready," said the sour-faced maid. "Where is the mistress?"
"She went down to the shed some time ago," said Conrad. And while the maid went to summon her mistress to tea, Conrad fished a toasting fork out of the sideboard drawer and proceeded to toast himself some bread. And during the toasting of it, and the buttering with much butter, and the slow enjoyment of eating it, Conrad listened to the foolish screaming of the maid beyond the dining room door and the chorus of confused cries that followed from the kitchen, and the scuttering footsteps and the petrified sobbing of those carrying a heavy burden into the house.
"Someone must break into the poor child,"
cried a shrill voice.
"Someone must tell the boy,"
said another. And while they debated the matter among themselves, Conrad made another piece of toast.